I thought losing my job was the worst thing that could happen to me. I was wrong. Dead wrong. When my boss, Vernon Cray, fired me in front of 40 coworkers and announced he was dating my wife, I wanted to disappear. But 12 hours later, a stranger's call revealed something that made me realize I wasn't the victim here. I was the lucky one. My name is Dennis Holbrook, and until that Tuesday morning in March, I thought I had life figured out. 43 years old, regional sales manager at Midwest Paper Solutions, married for 15 years to Nadine, father to my brilliant daughter Hazel, who was crushing her sophomore year at Ohio State. I drove a decent car, lived in a decent house in suburban Columbus, and had worked my way up from junior sales rep to managing the biggest accounts in the company. Not a spectacular life, but it was mine. Vernon Cray was everything I wasn't. 51 years old, silver-haired like a movie villain, the kind of man who wore $3,000 suits to casual Fridays and made sure everyone knew it. He'd been vice president of our division for 6 years, and in those 6 years, I'd watched him destroy careers with the same casual indifference most people reserved for swatting flies. He had this gold pen he'd tap against his desk when he was about to ruin someone's day. The sound of that pen clicking against mahogany still makes my skin crawl. Holbrook's got potential, he'd said when he first promoted me to regional manager 3 years ago. Don't disappoint me. Back then, I thought I'd impressed him. I worked 60-hour weeks, landed the Henderson Group contract that brought in $2 million in revenue, reorganized our entire sales structure to increase efficiency by 30%. My mother, Ruth, who lived at Shady Oaks Assisted Living across town, always said Vernon had snake eyes. "That man looks at you like he's measuring you for a coffin," she'd warned me during a company picnic. I laughed it off. Mothers worry too much, right? Nadine used to be my anchor. We met at a friend's barbecue when we were both 28, got married 2 years later in a small ceremony at her parents' church. She worked as a dental hygienist at a practice downtown, always came home with stories about difficult patients and the gossip between the other hygienists. We'd cook dinner together, watch crime documentaries on Netflix, plan vacations we'd never quite save enough to take. Hazel was our miracle baby, born after 3 years of trying and 2 miscarriages that nearly broke us. Maybe they did break us, and we just didn't realize it yet. The changes in Nadine started 6 months before that terrible Tuesday. She stopped laughing at my dumb jokes about paper sales, started working late, claiming Dr. Morrison had expanded the practice hours. Her phone was suddenly password protected, and she'd take calls in the garage, saying it was her sister going through another crisis. She bought new clothes, expensive ones that seemed too fancy for scraping plaque off teeth. When I asked about the Victoria's Secret charge on our credit card, she said she deserved to feel pretty. "Just because you've given up doesn't mean I have to," she'd said, and those words stung more than I admitted. My brother Garrett saw it before I did. He owned Garrett's Auto Repair on the South Side, built it from nothing into a successful shop with 8 employees. We'd grab beers every Thursday after work, and he'd grown quieter about Nadine over those last few months. "Dennis, you sure everything's okay at home?" he'd asked one night, peeling the label off his Budweiser. "Nadine seems different lately." I brushed him off, told him work was stressing us both out, that marriages go through rough patches. He just nodded, but I saw the concern in his eyes. Garrett was 2 years younger than me, but had always been the wiser one, the one who could read people like they were cars with their hoods popped open. The morning everything fell apart started like any other. I woke at 5:45, showered while Nadine pretended to sleep, though I could tell by her breathing she was awake. Made coffee in our silent kitchen, the only sound the gurgling of the machine and the neighbor's dog barking at shadows. I kissed Nadine's cheek before leaving, felt her turn away, smelled a cologne on her skin that wasn't mine. "Big presentation today," I said to her back. "The Peterson Industries account. If I land this, Vernon might finally approve that promotion." She mumbled something that might have been good luck or might have been don't care. I chose to hear good luck. At the office, I noticed the strange energy immediately. Conversations stopped when I walked by. My assistant Karen wouldn't make eye contact, just handed me my messages and hurried away. The conference room was already full when I arrived. 40 faces from our department all turned toward Vernon, who stood at the head of the table like an executioner checking his blade. Life has a way of giving you warning signs before disaster strikes, but we're usually too busy or too stubborn to see them. Looking back now, I can trace the cracks in my foundation back months, maybe even years, but at the time, I just kept my head down and pushed forward like I always did. That's what men like me do. We work, we provide, we endure. Midwest Paper Solutions wasn't just my employer. It had become my entire identity over 12 years. I started as a junior sales rep, cold calling businesses to switch their paper suppliers, getting hung up on 50 times a day, celebrating when someone gave me 5 minutes to make my pitch. The company occupied 3 floors of a glass building in downtown Columbus, all open floor plans and motivational posters about synergy and excellence. I knew every coffee stain on the 3rd floor carpet, every squeak in the elevator, every shortcut through the cubicle maze to avoid small talk with Peterson from accounting. My desk sat in the corner of the 3rd floor, what they called a premium spot, with a partial view of the parking garage. I'd decorated it with photos from better times. Nadine and me at Niagara Falls for our 10th anniversary, Hazel's high school graduation, where she gave the valedictorian speech my father's last Christmas before the cancer took him. That photo hurt the most to look at some days. Dad had worked 40 years at a steel mill, never missed a day, retired on a Friday and died the following Tuesday. "Don't be like me, Dennis," he'd said near the end. "Don't let work become your whole life." But there I was, following his footsteps in a different pair of shoes. The Peterson Industries account consumed my last 3 months. It was supposed to be my masterpiece, a 5-year contract worth $8 million that would supply paper products to their entire Midwest distribution network. I'd studied their operations, memorized their management structure, even drove to their facilities in Indiana to understand their workflow. Vernon had assigned me to it personally, one of those rare moments where he'd seemed almost human. "This is your chance to prove you belong in upper management, Holbrook," he'd said, that gold pen spinning between his fingers. "Don't screw it up." Every morning for those 3 months, I arrived at the office by 6:30 a.m. Karen would already have my coffee ready, black with 1 sugar, and the latest reports printed and highlighted. She was a good assistant, loyal in a way that's rare these days. 58 years old, been with the company longer than anyone except the founders, knew where all the bodies were buried. "Mr. Holbrook, you're working yourself to death," she'd say sometimes, motherly concern creeping into her voice. "When's the last time you took a real lunch break?" I'd wave her off, promise to slow down after the Peterson deal closed. Nadine's transformation happened so gradually, I almost missed it. First, it was the gym membership she suddenly needed, despite us having a perfectly good treadmill in the basement. Then came the book club that met every Wednesday night, though she never seemed to finish any books. Her phone became her constant companion, and she'd smile at texts in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. When I'd ask who she was texting, she'd say, "Just the girls from work," and leave the room. The dental office where she worked was only 15 minutes away, but somehow she started getting home 2 hours after her shift ended. My brother Garrett tried to warn me during one of our Thursday beer sessions at Murphy's Tavern, our usual booth in the back where the neon Budweiser sign flickered like a dying heartbeat. "She's different, Dennis," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Remember how she used to come to the shop, bring us lunch when we were working on your car? She hasn't been by in 6 months. And at Hazel's birthday dinner, she spent the whole time on her phone." I made excuses, told him about the pressure at work, how Vernon had been writing me harder than usual. Garrett just shook his head, grease still under his fingernails from a long day at the shop. A woman doesn't buy lingerie and hide the receipts because of work stress, brother. My mother, Ruth, saw everything from her room at Shady Oaks. Despite being 78 and dealing with arthritis that turned her hands into gnarled roots, her mind remained sharp as a surgical scalpel. Every Sunday, I'd visit her for lunch in the facility's dining room, and she'd interrogate me like a detective. "That wife of yours still working late?" she'd ask, stirring her soup with deliberate slowness. "Still got that new perfume that smells like a garden exploded?" Mom had never fully warmed to Nadine, always felt she was too concerned with appearances, too quick to mention what other people had that we didn't. "A woman who keeps score in a marriage is playing to win, not to love," Mom had said at our rehearsal dinner. I should have listened. The morning routine had become a cold ritual. Wake up, shower, dress in the walk-in closet to avoid waking Nadine even though she was always awake. Make coffee, check emails, leave a post-it note saying, "Have a good day," that she'd throw away without reading. The drive to work took 23 minutes if I hit the lights right, 35 if I didn't. I'd listen to talk radio, voices filling the silence that would otherwise force me to think about what my marriage had become. Sometimes I'd catch myself driving on autopilot, arriving at the office with no memory of the journey, like my body knew the way while my mind escaped somewhere else. Vernon's behavior toward me had shifted in those final weeks. The casual dismissiveness turned into active hostility. He'd interrupt my presentations to point out minor flaws, question my decisions in front of junior staff, make jokes about my old-fashioned sales approach. In one memorable meeting, he'd asked if I needed reading glasses, suggesting I'd missed obvious errors in my reports. There were no errors. We both knew it. The room knew it. But power doesn't need to be right, it just needs to be power. The quarterly review meeting was scheduled for 2 p.m. on that Tuesday, March 15th, a date that's now burned into my memory like a brand. I arrived 10 minutes early, my Peterson Industries presentation loaded on my laptop, 43 slides of market analysis, cost projections, and implementation strategies that represented 3 months of my life. The conference room was already filling up, the entire sales department plus key players from operations and finance. Vernon stood at the head of the table, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's mortgage payments, that gold pen tapping against his palm like a metronome, counting down to disaster. "Take a seat, Holbrook," Vernon said, his voice carrying that fake warmth he used before destroying someone. "We need to discuss something before your presentation." The room went quiet in that specific way that happens when everyone senses blood in the water. 40 pairs of eyes shifted between Vernon and me like spectators at a gladiator match. I set down my laptop bag, noticed my hands were steady despite the knot forming in my stomach. Karen sat in the corner taking minutes, and when our eyes met she looked away quickly, but not before I caught the pity in her expression. "Dennis," Vernon began, his voice projecting to ensure everyone could hear clearly, "we need to address your performance, the inconsistencies in your reports, the missed opportunities with existing clients, the general decline in your department's morale under your leadership." My mind raced through the last quarter's numbers. We were up 18%. Customer retention was at an all-time high. My team had just won the Regional Excellence Award. "Vernon, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Our numbers are the strongest they've been in 2 years. He smiled then, the kind of smile a cat gives a mouse just before the pounce. "Numbers aren't everything, Dennis. Leadership is about more than spreadsheets. It's about vision, innovation, inspiring others to greatness. Qualities that, frankly, you've demonstrated you lack." Jerry Kaufman from accounting actually gasped. Linda from HR shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her pen frozen above her notepad. The air conditioning hummed overhead, the only sound in a room full of people holding their breath. "Effective immediately, your employment with Midwest Paper Solutions is terminated," Vernon announced, each word deliberate and clear. "Security will escort you out after this meeting. Your final paycheck will be mailed, along with information about COBRA coverage for your health insurance. The words hit like physical blows. 12 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, postponed vacations, all reduced to a public execution for entertainment. But Vernon wasn't finished. He was just getting to the main event. "Oh, and Dennis," he continued, his voice taking on a casual tone that made my skin crawl. "There's something else you should know. In the interest of full transparency, since we believe in honesty here at Midwest Paper Solutions, I should inform you that Nadine and I are together now." The room erupted in whispers, shocked faces turning between us like they were watching a tennis match. Someone in the back actually laughed nervously, quickly stifled when others glared at them. Vernon's satisfaction radiated from him like heat from a furnace. "She's already moved her belongings to my penthouse downtown. We've been seeing each other for 3 months now. She felt you should hear it from me directly, professionally, rather than coming home to an empty house without explanation." My legs felt disconnected from my body, but somehow I stood up. "You're lying," I heard myself say, though the words sounded distant like someone else was speaking. Them. "Am I?" Vernon pulled out his phone, swiped to a photo, and held it up for everyone to see. There was Nadine, wearing a red dress I'd never seen, standing on what was clearly Vernon's balcony overlooking the downtown skyline, his arm around her waist, both of them raising champagne glasses to the camera. The timestamp showed last Saturday night, when she'd said she was at her book club. "She's a remarkable woman," Vernon continued, sliding his phone back into his pocket. "Deserves someone who can provide the life she wants, not someone stuck in middle management driving a 5-year-old Honda and living in a suburban house with a mortgage he can barely afford." The personal details stung, because they were true, twisted into weapons. Yes, I drove a 2019 Honda Accord because it was reliable and paid off. Yes, our house in Worthington was modest, but it was in a good school district for Hazel. These weren't failures, they were responsible choices. But in that room, under those fluorescent lights with 40 witnesses to my humiliation, they felt like scarlet letters branded on my chest. "Security's waiting outside," Vernon announced, gesturing toward the door where 2 guards stood, hands on their belts like they expected me to cause trouble. "Gather your things quickly. We have a real presentation to get through, one that actually matters." Earl, the older security guard with kind eyes and a gray mustache, approached me first. "Come on, son," he said quietly, his hand gentle on my elbow. "Let's get your things." The walk through the office felt like a funeral march. Conversations stopped as we passed. Some coworkers looked away in embarrassment. Others stared with naked curiosity, a few with genuine sympathy. My desk had already been packed, my personal items thrown haphazardly into a brown cardboard box. The photo of Nadine and me at Niagara Falls sat on top, her smiling face now a mockery of everything I'd believed. "That wasn't right, what they did up there," Earl whispered as we waited for the elevator. "I've been doing this job 15 years, walked out a lot of folks. Never seen anything that cruel." His partner, a younger guy with dead eyes and a badge that read Morrison, seemed to enjoy the spectacle. "Policy is policy," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Can't have terminated employees lingering on the premises. Security risk." The elevator ride down felt endless. 3 floors of humiliation, each ding marking another level of my descent. In the parking garage, they watched me load the box into my Honda's trunk. My world's best dad coffee mug had shattered during the packing, leaving coffee stains across the family photos and sharp ceramic pieces that drew blood when I tried to clean them up. "Don't come back," Morrison said as I got in my car. "Your keycard's been deactivated, and you're on the no-entry list. Any attempt to return will be considered trespassing." Earl slipped a business card into my hand as Morrison walked away. "My nephew's a lawyer," he whispered, "handles wrongful termination cases. What happened up there wasn't just wrong, it might be actionable. Give him a call." I drove home on autopilot, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. Fired. Publicly humiliated. Betrayed by my wife. All in the span of 10 minutes, my entire life had been demolished like a controlled building implosion, leaving nothing but dust and debris where something solid used to stand. The radio played some cheerful pop song about love and happiness, and I turned it off, preferring the silence that matched the emptiness expanding inside my chest. The house felt like a crime scene when I walked through the front door. Everything looked normal but felt violated, like invisible fingerprints covered every surface. Nadine's absence screamed from every room. The closet doors stood open, empty hangers swaying slightly from the air conditioning, gaps on the bathroom counter where her cosmetics used to crowd for space. She'd taken the good towels, the expensive sheets we'd bought for our anniversary, even the coffee maker she'd gotten me for Christmas. But she'd left our wedding album on the coffee table, open to a photo of us cutting the cake, her lipstick kiss on my cheek, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. Her wedding ring sat on the kitchen counter with a note written on her personal stationery, the kind with her initials embossed at the top. "It's better this way. Don't call me. N." That was it. 15 years reduced to 11 words. I picked up the ring, a simple gold band with 3 small diamonds I'd saved 6 months to afford, remembered how her hand shook when I slipped it on her finger at the altar. Now it felt like evidence of a life that never really existed. I sat in my living room as darkness fell, a glass of bourbon in my hand that I couldn't bring myself to drink. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the tick of the grandfather clock Nadine's parents had given us as a wedding gift. 7 p.m. came and went, the time we usually ate dinner together. 8 p.m., when we'd watch whatever show we were working through on Netflix. 9 p.m., when she'd take her shower and I'd pretend to read while actually listening to her sing off-key. 10 p.m., when we'd go to bed, sometimes together, sometimes not, but always in the same house, the same life, the same lie I now realized we'd been living. My phone had been silent all day except for 2 texts, one from Hazel. "Dad, are you okay? Someone from your office called me. Please call me back." The other from Garrett. "Heard what happened. Vernon's lucky I don't know where he lives. I'm coming over." I couldn't respond to either. What would I say? How could I explain that their father, their brother, was such a fool he couldn't see his life falling apart until it exploded in his face? At 11:47 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was a telemarketer. A wrong number. But something made me swipe accept. "Don't hang up," the voice said immediately. Male, gravelly, older, with the kind of authority that made you listen. "You don't know me, but I know everything about you, Dennis Holbrook." "Who is this?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Someone who knows Vernon Cray better than you think. He didn't just steal your wife, Dennis. Listen carefully because what I'm about to tell you will change everything." I sat up straighter, the bourbon forgotten. "I'm listening." "My name is Malcolm Shores. I'm a private investigator. Used to be a forensic accountant for the FBI before I went private. Vernon's first wife hired me during their divorce 5 years ago. Suspected he was hiding assets. What I found was much worse. The name Vernon's first wife triggered a memory. There'd been whispers about a messy divorce, but Vernon had spun it as her being unstable, greedy, trying to take him for everything. We'd all believed him because that's what you do when the boss tells you something. "Your wife is victim number 4, Malcolm continued. "Vernon has a pattern. He targets married women whose husbands work for him, seduces them, destroys the husband's career, then discards the woman once he gets bored. 3 to 6 months is his usual timeline. Your wife has maybe 3 weeks before he moves on to someone younger, prettier, more exciting." "That's not my problem anymore," I said, though the words tasted bitter. Malcolm laughed, a harsh sound like gravel in a blender. "No, but this might be. Vernon's been embezzling from Midwest Paper Solutions. $2 million over 4 years, funneled through fake vendor accounts. shell companies that exist only on paper. The kind of paper trail you'd recognize, being in paper sales and all. My mind raced back through the Peterson Industries proposal, the vendor reports I'd been reviewing, those inconsistencies I'd noticed but hadn't had time to investigate. The Hartley Foods account, I said suddenly. There were payments to vendors that didn't match any delivery schedules. Bingo, Malcolm said. You were getting too close. The Peterson review would have required a full audit of vendor relationships. Vernon couldn't risk that. So he destroyed you before you could expose him. Why should I believe you? Because in approximately 10 hours, your company email access will be revoked. It's standard protocol, 24 hours after termination. But right now, you still have access. Log in, download everything from the Hartley Foods folder, the Brennan Industries files, and anything related to a company called Sigma Paper Wholesale. That company doesn't exist except in Vernon's imagination and his Cayman Islands bank account. And then what? Then you meet me tomorrow morning, Riverside Diner on Route 40, 7 a.m. sharp. I'll have documents you need to see, and you'll have evidence the FBI needs to finally nail Vernon Cray to the wall. The FBI? They've been building a case for 18 months. White-collar crime division, working with the IRS. They needed someone on the inside, someone with access who wasn't part of Vernon's inner circle. Your firing is the break they've been waiting for. You're not dirty, Dennis, you're clean, which makes you the perfect witness. Why are you helping me? I asked, though I was already pulling out my laptop, fingers typing in my company credentials. There was a pause, and when Malcolm spoke again, his voice carried a weight of old pain. Vernon destroyed my brother the same way 5 years ago, took his wife, his job, his reputation. My brother put a gun in his mouth 6 months later. Left a note saying he couldn't live with the shame. Vernon Cray has destroyed enough lives, it's time someone stopped him. The email system let me in, my credentials still valid. There they were, all the folders Malcolm had mentioned. I started downloading, watching the progress bars creep across my screen while Malcolm gave me more instructions. Don't try to contact your wife. Don't confront Vernon. Don't tell anyone except your lawyer what you're doing. Vernon has eyes everywhere, but he's also arrogant. He thinks you're broken, defeated, probably drunk in your empty house. Let him think that. What about Nadine? She made her choice. But Dennis, there's something else you should know. We have evidence she was planning to divorce you anyway. Vernon just accelerated her timeline. She's been moving money from your joint accounts for months, small amounts you wouldn't notice. Check your statements. She was going to clean you out and leave regardless. Vernon just offered her a softer landing. I pulled up our bank app while the files downloaded. There they were, transfers I'd never noticed. $50 here, $100 there, always to her personal account. Always just under the amount that would trigger a notification. $3,000 over 6 months. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. The FBI agent assigned to the case is Patricia Vance, Malcolm continued. She'll be at the diner tomorrow, too. Bring everything you download tonight. Make copies, store them in multiple places. And Dennis, one more thing. What? Your brother Garrett and your daughter Hazel, they're good people. They're going to want to help. Let them. You're going to need support for what comes next. Vernon Cray doesn't go down easy, but when he falls hard. And he takes everyone connected to him down too. Your wife chose the wrong side. Make sure you choose the right one. The downloads finished at 12:23 a.m. 67 files, 8 gigabytes of evidence, 4 years of Vernon's crimes documented in spreadsheets and email chains. I backed them up to 3 flash drives, uploaded copies to a secure cloud server, even emailed them to an old Gmail account I hadn't used in years. I'll see you at 7, I told Malcolm. Dennis, he said before hanging up, you've been a victim. Tomorrow you become a weapon. Vernon Cray is going to prison, and you're going to be the one who puts him there. Sleep well tonight. It's the last peaceful night Vernon will ever have. The Riverside Diner sat on Route 40, like a relic from better times, all chrome and neon, red vinyl booths, and coffee that could strip paint. I arrived at 6:45 a.m., my eyes burning from no sleep, 3 flash drives in different pockets like I was carrying nuclear codes. Malcolm Shores was already there, a man in his 60s with military short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much, sitting in the back booth with clear sightlines to both exits. Across from him sat a woman in a navy suit who could only be FBI. "Dennis Holbrook," Malcolm said as I slid into the booth. "Meet Special Agent Patricia Vance. She's been wanting to meet you for a very long time." Agent Vance had the kind of handshake that meant business, firm and brief, her eyes already calculating what kind of witness I'd make. "Mr. Holbrook, what you're about to learn might be disturbing. But first, did you bring the files?" I handed over one of the flash drives. She pulled out a laptop, inserted it, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Her expression shifted from professional interest to predatory satisfaction. "The Sigma paper wholesale invoices. We've been trying to get these for 6 months. Mr. Holbrook, you just gave us the missing piece." Malcolm slid a thick manila folder across the table. "Open it." Inside were photographs that made my stomach turn. Vernon with different women, all following the same pattern. The wife of a warehouse manager, the wife of a sales director, the wife of a systems analyst. All men who'd been fired suddenly, all women who'd been discarded within months. Bank statements showing payments to the women, temporary apartment leases in Vernon's name, even receipts from the same jewelry store for identical diamond necklaces. "He's a predator," Agent Vance said simply. "But that's just the personal side. The financial crimes are what will put him away." She pulled out another folder, this one marked FBI Confidential. $2.3 million embezzled over 4 years. Fake vendors, inflated invoices, kickbacks from suppliers. Your files prove what we suspected but couldn't verify. Vernon authorized every one of these payments personally. "But here's the part that's going to hurt," Malcolm said, his voice gentler now. "Your wife wasn't just having an affair. She was actively helping Vernon access your personal financial information. We have emails, Dennis. She was sending him your bank statements, your 401k information, even your daughter's college fund details." Agent Vance pulled out a printed email chain. There was Nadine's personal email address, messages to Vernon discussing my bonus structure, my accumulated vacation pay, the equity in our house. "She was helping him figure out how much you were worth," Vance explained. "Vernon promised her half of what he could extract from you in the divorce, plus what he was skimming from the company. She thought she was getting a millionaire. She was actually becoming an accomplice to federal crimes." The diner's coffee turned to acid in my stomach. "She was planning to rob me?" "More than that," Malcolm said. "She was going to claim abuse, say you were unstable, violent. Vernon had coached others through the same playbook. Make the husband look dangerous, get a restraining order, take everything while playing the victim. Your firing was supposed to be the trigger for your breakdown." "We need your help," Agent Vance said, leaning forward. "We have enough to arrest Vernon, but we want more. We want him to confess, to implicate himself beyond any shadow of doubt. Would you be willing to wear a wire?" "When?" "Tonight, Vernon called your cell at 3 a.m., left a voicemail. Did you listen to it?" I hadn't even checked. I pulled out my phone, played the message on speaker. Vernon's voice, slightly slurred from alcohol. "Dennis, it's Vernon. I feel bad about how things went down. Man to man, we should talk. Meet me at Carmine's tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Let's discuss your severance package. Maybe we can work something out that benefits everyone." "He's going to try to buy your silence," Malcolm said. "Probably offer you 6 months severance if you sign an NDA, agree not to discuss anything about the company or your termination. He's also arrogant enough to brag," Agent Vance added. "Get him talking about Nadine, about the other women, about how smart he thinks he is. We'll be listening from a van outside. The moment he incriminates himself, we move in. That night, I walked into Carmine's, the Italian restaurant where Vernon held court like a mafia don. He'd reserved a private dining room in the back, away from other customers. He was already there, that same charcoal suit, that gold pen sitting beside his whiskey glass. The wire felt like it was burning against my chest, though Agent Vance had assured me it was undetectable. "Dennis," Vernon stood, extending his hand like we were old friends. "Thanks for coming. Sit, have a drink. The 20-year scotch here is exceptional." I sat, ordered a beer I wouldn't drink, and waited. Vernon didn't disappoint. "Look, yesterday was harsh," he began, his voice carrying false sympathy. "But you have to understand. Business is business. Nadine came to me, not the other way around. She was unhappy, Dennis, said you'd become a stranger, married to your job, no passion left. Can you blame her for wanting more?" "And the others?" I asked, remembering Agent Vance's coaching. "I heard there were others before Nadine." Vernon laughed, actually laughed, swirling his whiskey. "You've been doing homework." "Yes, there were others. Martha, Jennifer, Patricia, all desperate housewives looking for excitement. Their husbands were weak, Dennis, like you. No offense, but men like you are predictable. You work hard, follow. Rules never take risks. Women get bored with that." "Must be expensive," I said, fighting to keep my voice level, keeping them happy. "That's the beautiful part." Vernon leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I don't use my money. The company has so many revenue streams. Who notices a few thousand here and there? Sigma paper. Wholesale alone nets me 40 grand a month. Fake company, real profits. I invoice Midwest paper, they pay Sigma. Sigma's account happens to be in the Caymans under my control. That's fraud." "That's business," Vernon corrected. "Everyone skims, the board members, the CEO, they all have their schemes. Mine just happens to be more elegant." 4 years, Dennis, 4 years, and no one noticed until you started poking around the Peterson account. You were getting too close to Sigma's invoices. I couldn't have that. "So you destroyed my life." "I gave you a gift," Vernon said, his arrogance fully unleashed. "Nadine was already planning to leave. I have the text messages where she called you pathetic, said she was disgusted watching you eat dinner, couldn't stand another night in that suburban prison. At least this way, you can blame me instead of facing the truth that she just didn't love you anymore." "And the others? Their wives?" "Same story. Unhappy women, boring husbands, predictable outcomes. The husbands always blame me, never themselves. It's easier that way. Here's what I'm offering, Dennis. 50,000 in severance, call it a consulting fee. You sign an NDA, agree not to discuss anything about Midwest paper or your termination. You definitely don't mention Sigma or any other vendor accounts. Take the money, start over. Maybe find a woman who actually wants you this time." The door burst open before I could respond. FBI agents flooded the room. Weapons drawn, badges reflecting the restaurant's ambient lighting. Vernon's whiskey glass shattered on the floor as he jumped up, his face cycling through confusion, anger, and finally, terrible understanding. "Vernon Cray," Agent Vance announced, her voice carrying the weight of federal authority. "You're under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent." Vernon looked at me, then at the wire now visible where my shirt had pulled up, and his face transformed into something inhuman with rage. "You set me up. You pathetic nobody. You set me up." "Actually," I said, standing as they cuffed him, "you set yourself up. I just held the door open while you walked through it." As they led him out, Vernon tried one last manipulation. "Nadine was in on it. She knew about the money. Helped plan everything. If I go down, she goes down." "We know," Agent Vance said simply. "She's being arrested as we speak." The last image of Vernon Cray was him being pushed into an FBI sedan, his $3,000 suit wrinkled, his gold pen left behind on the table next to the broken whiskey glass, his empire of manipulation crumbling in real time. The king had fallen, and he'd taken his queen with him. 6 months later, I stood in Vernon Cray's old office, now mine, watching the October rain streak down the windows that overlooked downtown Columbus. The mahogany desk where he used to tap that gold pen now held pictures of my daughter Hazel at her junior year orientation, my brother Garrett at his shop's expansion grand opening, and my mother Ruth on her 80th birthday, surrounded by the grandchildren who actually visited her. The office felt different with the right person in it, like a house that had been exorcised of its ghosts. Vernon got 15 years federal time, no possibility of early release. The judge called his crimes a systematic betrayal of trust that destroyed multiple lives for nothing more than greed and ego. They found $4 million total when they finished their investigation, hidden in 6 different offshore accounts, plus 3 properties he'd bought under shell company names. Every penny got seized, every asset frozen. He went from a penthouse to a cell block in the span of 3 weeks. Nadine got 5 years for conspiracy to commit fraud, plus 2 years probation. Her lawyer tried to paint her as another victim of Vernon's manipulation, but the emails killed that defense. There she was in black and white, planning to drain our accounts, fabricate abuse allegations, destroy my relationship with Hazel. The woman I'd loved for 15 years had become a stranger, or maybe she'd always been one and I'd just been too blind to see it. She sent letters from prison, long rambling apologies that my lawyer told me not to read. I listened to him. Some words don't deserve to be heard. The company board called me personally to apologize. The chairman, Robert Fitzgerald, flew in from New York to offer me Vernon's position himself. "We failed you, Dennis," he said, sitting in my living room, looking genuinely ashamed. "We let a cancer grow in our organization. We need someone with integrity to cut it out and heal the damage. That's you." The salary was triple what I'd been making. The bonus structure was generous. But the best part was the respect. The knowledge that 40 people who'd watched my humiliation now reported to me, and not one of them could meet my eyes for the first month. I didn't fire anyone who'd laughed that day, didn't seek revenge. I just did my job well, and that was revenge enough. My daughter Hazel became my rock through everything. She drove home from Ohio State the night of my arrest, found me sitting in the dark living room, and simply held me while I finally broke down. "Dad," she said, wise beyond her 20 years, "Mom showed me who she really was. You showed me who you really are. You survived this with your integrity intact. That's what matters." She spent that summer with me, helping me redecorate the house, remove every trace of Nadine, make it ours instead of theirs. We painted the walls, bought new furniture, created a home that felt like breathing again. Garrett's support never wavered. He offered me a job at his shop the day after the firing, said I could work the register, learn to change oil, whatever I needed to stay busy and pay bills. "You're my brother," he said simply. "That means something." When I got Vernon's job, Garrett took me out for beers and said, "Don't become him, Dennis. Don't let that office change who you are." I promised him it wouldn't, and I've kept that promise. Every Thursday, we still meet at Murphy's Tavern. Same booth, same beer, same brotherhood that survived everything. My mother Ruth had the best reaction to the whole saga. When I told her about Vernon's arrest, she smiled and said, "I told you that man had snake eyes, but you, my son, you've got survivor's eyes. Your father would be proud." She was right about Dad. He'd always said a man's character isn't shown when things go well, but when they fall apart. "Anyone can sail in calm weather," he used to say. "It's the storms that show who can really navigate." The Peterson Industries deal that started everything? I closed it 2 months after taking over Vernon's position. $8 million over 5 years, the largest contract in company history. I insisted Karen, my former assistant, now office manager, be there for the signing. She'd supported me through the worst of it, and she deserved to see the triumph. Malcolm Shores became an unexpected friend. We meet for coffee once a month. Two men who'd been broken by Vernon Cray's cruelty but refused to stay down. He told me about his brother, showed me pictures of the man Vernon had destroyed 5 years earlier. "You survived what killed him," Malcolm said one morning. "That's not small, that's everything." He was at the trial, sitting in the gallery when Vernon got sentenced, and I saw him cry for the first time. Justice delayed, but not denied. Agent Patricia Vance sent me a letter after the trial. "Mr. Holbrook, in 20 years of investigating white-collar crime, I've rarely seen someone handle themselves with such grace under pressure. Your testimony was crucial, but your dignity was inspiring. Vernon Cray destroyed many lives. You're the one who stopped him. Never forget that." The 5 words that changed everything came from Malcolm that night on the phone. Good men deserve second chances. But I've learned it's more than that. Good men create their own second chances. They take the wreckage of their lives and build something better, stronger, more authentic. They don't let the Vernon Crays of the world have the final word. I still live in the same house in Worthington, still drive a Honda, though it's a newer model now. Some nights I stand in my kitchen where Nadine left her wedding ring and marvel at how much can change in such a short time. The man who stood in that spot 6 months ago, broken and humiliated, feels like a stranger now. Or maybe he was always the stranger, and the real me was waiting underneath, needing the worst day of my life to finally emerge. Last week, I hired a new sales manager, a young woman named Jessica whose husband works in accounting. Vernon would have seen them as potential victims. I see them as good people deserving of a chance to build their lives without predators lurking in corner offices. That's the difference between Vernon's legacy and mine. He destroyed, I'm rebuilding. Sometimes people ask if I'm bitter about what happened. The truth is, I'm grateful. Grateful the truth came out. Grateful I discovered who Nadine really was before we wasted another 15 years. Grateful my daughter saw her father refuse to break. Grateful my brother never doubted me. Grateful my mother lived to see justice served. Even grateful to Vernon, in a twisted way, for being so arrogant he couldn't resist confessing his crimes while wearing a wire. The company is stronger now. The toxic culture Vernon created is being replaced with something better. People aren't afraid to speak up anymore. They know corruption has consequences. They've seen that even the powerful can fall, and the good guys sometimes do win in the end. My phone rang yesterday, unknown number. For a second, my heart raced, remembering that night when Malcolm called. But it was just a wrong number, someone looking for a pizza place. I gave them the right number and hung up, smiling at how a random call no longer triggers trauma. That's healing, I suppose, when the worst thing that ever happened to you becomes just something that happened to you. Vernon thought he was destroying me that day in the conference room. Instead, he set me free. Free from a marriage built on lies. Free from working under a corrupt boss. Free from the small life I'd accepted as enough. Sometimes destruction is just renovation in disguise. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you really have. Those 5 words, good men deserve second chances, became my North Star. But here's what I've learned. We don't just deserve second chances. We earn them. We fight for them. We build them from the ashes of our first chances. And when we get them, we make damn sure we don't waste them. My name is Dennis Holbrook. I was publicly fired, humiliated, and betrayed. My boss stole my wife and my dignity in front of 40 witnesses, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because rock bottom isn't where your story ends. It's where your real story begins. If you found value in this story, if it reminded you that surviving disaster is possible, that justice sometimes prevails, that good men really do deserve second chances, then please take a moment to like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear that their worst day doesn't define them. Leave a comment about your own experience with betrayal and redemption, because we're all fighting battles, and sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories about real people facing real challenges and coming out stronger on the other side. Remember, your comeback is always stronger than your setback. Until next time, keep fighting, keep believing, and keep proving that good people don't just deserve second chances, they create them.